As we get older in life, I feel like there's something that's just guaranteed to happen no matter what. And that is the fact that we're going to start hating the younger generation stuff and anything to do with it just because things were better back in the day.
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
It's such a common occurrence that I actually feel like it's kind of a rite of passage in a certain sense. Like, I've even caught myself doing it at certain times, and I kind of have to rein myself back in. But it seems like Slipknot's Shawn Crahan, also better known as Clown, is finally at that point, or has been and is now vocal about it, because he just did a recent interview with NME where he said that all the great bands have come and gone and that there are so many horrible bands that are going to be our future headliners. Now, I've been in the metal community long enough to know that there's probably a lot of people out there, actually not probably, there are a lot of people out there that share this same viewpoint with Shawn, probably some of you watching this video. And even for me, I would personally consider myself like a recovering metal elitist, because there were definitely points in my life where I was just into the metal that I was into, and I thought that everything else, especially the new stuff, was garbage. But I honestly don't have that opinion anymore. I'm way more open to other things, new music, other genres. And I kind of want to take this video and do a deep dive into what Shawn is talking about here and kind of give you my perspective on why I think that the future of metal is gonna be all right. So the interview that Shawn did with NME was a pretty decent length, actually. It's a pretty long read. And the first half of it mainly focused specifically on Slipknot. They were talking about their current 25th anniversary tour where they're exclusively playing songs from their self-titled 1999 debut album, his feelings about the band, both present and past, Aloy joining the band, and their future unreleased music. But at one point, the interview did take a turn and specifically asked Shawn what he thought about Sleep Token being elevated to the headliner position at Download 2025 and about the big divide that it's caused amongst the fans, to which he responded, "They have their niche and they must be doing their business well. The old me might have torn it down, but the new me, the real me, is just like, hey, it's always up to the fans. The fans let the business people know what to do. The fans speak and the business people listen." Which, what he said there at the very end is absolutely 100% true. I know there's a lot of people that don't like to hear it because we like to look at music as like an art and stuff that we can emotionally connect to, but make no mistake, the music industry is a business just like anything else. And all of these festival promoters, concert promoters, venues, bands, they're all trying to find a way to make a living and make a career and make money in the music space. And the biggest gauge on all of that, which these people listen to and look for, is the fans. Give the fans what they want, which is actually why you've seen for the last 20 years pretty much the same bands headlining all of the major festivals around the world. Bands like Slipknot, Korn, Disturbed. It's because they're a safe financial bet. It's because these bands have had big, massive careers, and the majority of festival goers do like these bands, and they're interested in seeing them. And where we're at right now, let's be honest, nostalgia sells a ton. It's because a lot of people were teenagers when they discovered these bands and discovered this music, and now 20 years later, they're all adults that have money to spend at festivals. I mean, hell, Slipknot's on a tour right now where they're only playing songs from their first self-titled 1999 album. It's because that's what the fans want to hear right now. Give the fans what they want. It's why when I just saw Korn headline another festival down in Australia, 90% of their set were songs from like their first 3 or 4 albums, and that was pretty much it. Again, you give the fans what they want. But back onto the Sleep Token topic, Shawn continued by saying, "They must be very popular, and you've got to remember that there's not a lot of good music out there. There just isn't. In my opinion, these days, there are so many horrible bands right now. I've seen Sleep Token, I've watched them for a bit, and I've downloaded their stuff. They have their niche and they have a fan base. It doesn't matter if it is divided download fans, because that means 50% are getting what they want. I no longer worry about these sort of things. I just worry about being me and about being in the moment. If they're a good band and if they work hard, as it seems like they do, they deserve everything they get. I do find it a little odd that Shawn just said Sleep Token must be popular, like he doesn't actually know, unless he's been living in his own little musical bubble and not paying attention, because yeah, they're popular. But again, he did address that he's watched them play and he's downloaded their music, so he has to be aware of their presence. At the time of recording this video, they have 4.2 million monthly listeners on Spotify, which is a more than commendable number for a somewhat newer band in the metal space. In comparison, Slipknot has over 14 million monthly listeners, but they do have a career that has spanned over 2 decades. I would like to point out, however, that this is now the second time Shawn has used the word niche when talking about Sleep Token's music and their fan base, which I could be wrong about this, but niche is usually one of those words in the industry that people use when they don't like something, but they're just trying to be very polite about it. I could be totally wrong. Of course, I don't know what Shawn likes and what he's into, and I could be off base, but I did find it kind of funny. Shawn continues, as I was saying, there are so many horrible bands who are going to be our future headliners. You don't want me to start naming off names because we'll both start laughing and laughing. The days of great music have come and gone at the moment. We're seeing the backlash of the computer, and we're seeing the backlash of everybody being able to get into the music industry. But where is everybody that got in and did it themselves? They all need validation. Now, if I'm being blunt and 100% honest, I really don't like this mentality when it comes to newer music and the way that the music industry is right now. When people bring up, oh, computers have made it easy and computers are ruining things and it's made it way too easy for people to make music and get into the industry, like, why is that a bad thing? Technology has advanced to the point where, yeah, music and the ability to make music is more widely available, but I personally think that's awesome. I wish this technology existed 20 years ago when I was a teenager and I was trying to make music, because think about it this way. If you're from a small town like I was, I grew up in a town of about 3,000 to 4,000 people. If you want to be in a band or you want to make music, let's put it that way, you want to make music, you have to, learn an instrument. You still have to do that now, even if you're going to use a computer. But you have to find other people in your hometown that also want to make the same kind of music with you and do jams and stuff like that. And you also have to hope that those people can play different instruments than you can. But now, in today's current age, if there's a kid out there that wants to make music and can't find these people around them in their hometown, they can easily get a DAW on their computer, some VSTs, a digital guitar rig, some drum programming options. This is all accessible now, and I think it's awesome. Sure, this has caused there to be more music and more music available and accessible, which statistically would provide more horrible bands out there. But let's be 100% honest, bad bands, or what people would subjectively consider bad bands, have always existed. They're just more accessible now. And let's be fair here, music is subjective, so what Shawn considers to be a horrible or bad band may be something that I or somebody else might actually really like, and vice versa. Shawn said in here, you don't want me to name names when talking about the current horrible bands, but just for my morbid curiosity, I would actually like him to, because I kind of want to get his gauge on what he thinks is good and what's horrible, because look, I used to be stuck in that bubble too, man. Again, I used to only listen to things that I had already grown up on, and I didn't want to discover new music because I thought all the new stuff was garbage. But honestly, the turning point for me was starting this YouTube channel and discovering a lot of new bands that mainly came from suggestions from you guys, the viewers. And it kind of opened up my perspective on everything. And now I've discovered so many bands that I just genuinely love. Like, the day and age we're in with music is awesome. There is so much good stuff out there, but you have to be open to finding it, because if you're stuck in that bubble and with that mentality, like Shawn said, the days of good music are long gone, you're never going to find those new bands. Now, back to Shawn in the interview, he continued by saying, I didn't get into a band to get validated. I validated myself. When someone said I needed to work harder, I worked fucking harder. I didn't need the internet or socials or anything to validate me. We have a real problem now, and bands that are good these days, which is few and far, are being prepped for this future. We saw that with Bring Me the Horizon. They're a great band, and I'm a fan. I've listened to the band since the very, very beginning, and they're doing big things like headlining Download because they can make the jump. I mean, to be fair here, this is again one of those kind of like old school mentalities of like, you know, these younger kids aren't doing it the way we did it, but the internet and socials and stuff like that were a relatively new thing when Slipknot started getting really big. I mean, even the social media platforms that we have now didn't really exist back then. So of course things are going to be a lot different. Now, kind of to his point, and I've said this a lot, I do believe that social media has rewired the way that our society thinks, the way that people do feel like they need validation. But to compare what bands are doing now to back then is wildly different because the technology and our society is completely different. He finished by saying, great bands are being pushed into these new circumstances. What else do we have without artists like that? A bunch of crap bands that won't draw tickets. So yes, the business people need to take chances and push these few good bands in the right direction. So in Shawn's mind, or at least in the quote that he gave us that I can gather context from, he only thinks that there's a few bands out right now that are worthy of being elevated to these headlining slots at festivals. But besides naming Bring Me the Horizon, he hasn't named anybody else or any newer bands, so we don't really know who he's talking about or what kind of music he thinks is worthy of that. But we are starting to see some festival promoters taking some risks and taking some chances and bringing in newer bands for headlining slots. For years, we've seen the same bands headlining these festivals, as we talked before. It's a safe financial bet for the promoters because these bands have established careers and they will draw. But in 2025, we are starting to see a slight changing of the guard, so to speak, which will happen over time at certain points. Bands like Sleep Token, Falling in Reverse, Electric Callboy, Lorna Shore, Bad Omens, Knocked Loose, and many others I didn't just name, all have headlining slots at major festivals in 2025. And some of these bands I named were already headlining these festivals last year. And a couple of these bands were headlining those festivals the year before that. And this will continue to happen as some of these older bands decide to call it quits and retire. You're gonna start seeing some of these newer bands or bands that have been established for a while but have never had the chance to headline, they will get that chance. And let's also be honest here, it's kind of funny because these same things that Shawn is saying now were probably said by some of the older guard about Slipknot when they first started, before they started headlining. So it is kind of funny and wildly ironic that Shawn is saying this stuff when there's a really good chance the same stuff was being said about them 20 years ago. But listen, to wrap this up, I will say I am a huge Slipknot fan, and I have been since 1999 when they did release that debut album. That being said, I do have a problem with this mentality, and at times I do find it kind of a big problem that members of these bands that have been put up on a pedestal by some people are saying these kinds of things, because there are other fans out there that may already kind of have this same mindset, and they hear somebody in a band they like say it, and it only reaffirms the bias and the mindset that they already have. And then that could lead to them just being like, oh yeah, you know, I'm right saying that all these new bands suck because the bands I like are saying the same things. And then that could lead to them being more closed off from trying to discover new music and these newer bands that are coming up. Again, like I said before, I firmly believe that there is so much good music out there in the world today. You just have to be open to the possibility of discovering something new. And I'm not even suggesting you have to like the new things you discover. Again, music is very subjective and everybody likes different things. But if you are one of those people that doesn't want to get outside that bubble and discover something new, I challenge you to try and do that, because you never know. You may just come across a new band and discover something new that you really like, and you find something that you end up loving and listening to for years to come. So thank you to everybody that took the time to watch this. If you'd like, you can join me over on Twitch too, where we stream and do reactions and talk about music industry stuff. You can go to twitch.tv/TankTheTech. You can also follow me on a ton of different social media. My handle on just about everything is @TankTheTech. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will see you very soon.